So the sequel to Judgment got announced and holy Christ am I excited. I really enjoyed the first game and was eager to see more detective mystery stories following Yakami, which is exactly what we're getting. For starters, let me just say, Lost Judgment, pretty cool name in my opinion. Another thing that especially blew my mind was the release date. It's coming out this year and the release is worldwide, which is a first for Ryuga Gotoku. I thought we'd have to wait at least another year, especially when taking into account the pandemic, but nah, they're working fast. I don't know about you, but I've already started saving money for the pre-order, which you know I'll pay for it. There are a couple of other things to note from the trailer. For one, unlike Yakuza 7, this game will continue to be a beat-em-up action fighting game. I was wondering if they were gonna adapt the turn-based RPG system, although I was a lot more inclined to believe that they wouldn't, largely because one of the reasons why we saw that system introduced was because the director of Yakuza 7 was Ryusuke Hori, a creative person that was highly influenced by video games throughout his life and wanted to integrate that into the game, which can even be seen through the protagonist Ichiban, who's a big fan of Dragon Quest and interpret his journey in the game as if it were a JRPG adventure. I don't think that kind of creative direction would make sense for Judgment, and it's a lot more logical to just continue what they were doing. Yagami's combat probably won't change too much, although we're getting introduced to a third playing style called Snake. One thing I like about Yagami, which can also be seen in Yakuza 0 and Kiwami, is how shifting style changes your demeanor and each of them have their own special advantages. The Snake style was described as being useful for fighting against opponents with weapons. During the reveal footage, we only saw him countering a knife, so I do wonder if the more you upgrade your skills via XP points, the more weapons you'll be able to counter, like firearms or even junk you pick up on the street. If that's the case, then with that and possibly more additions of climax skills, this game could potentially have the best combat system. I'm also excited to see how the investigations will improve as well. They made it very clear that the stealth will get deeper, but I do wonder if the structure of the investigations will change as well, maybe even requiring more brain power from the audience to piece together puzzles. It seems like collecting clues will get an upgrade, and apparently at one point in the story we'll have to interact with high schoolers in order to gather information about the case. How much of this will affect side cases and submissions is up in the air, but as far as the main story goes, I think we're going to witness a much more in-depth investigation taking place, although we'll have to wait to find out. One thing I'm very curious about are the school stories. They categorize them as side content, so a lot of what we can explore probably won't end up being too important for the main story, but they open opportunities for some amusing sub-stories, especially because they seem to involve minigames, which are always a treat. The last thing I want to talk about is the setting, because this game will take place in two cities, Tokyo as always, and surprisingly Yokohama in the exact same setting as Yakuza 7. While I'm sure it would have been more exciting to see a new city, I actually don't mind going back to Yokohama, because when you look back at previous cities in the Yakuza series, most of them don't really match Kamurocho in terms of scale, at least in my opinion. Yokohama, on the other hand, absolutely does. In fact, if it wasn't for the fact that Sotenbori has been the stage for some of the most memorable plots in Yakuza, I'd even say that Yokohama is my second favorite area in the series, and the idea of returning to this place doesn't bother me in the slightest, especially with the addition of a new location, that being the high school, which seems to be the equivalent of the hospital in the first Judgment game, except probably a lot better because of the size and pool of content it will likely provide. I don't think we're going to see the same minigames present in Yakuza 7, I just wonder if the ones they'll introduce in this game will compensate it. Something else I want to touch on, which is kind of inevitable, is whether or not this game will finally answer the question I've been asking for quite some time. If you don't know, I've made 3 videos at this point talking about the canonicity of Judgment. I won't go too deep into the entire conversation, you should just check them out if you want to catch up, but I ended off by saying that Judgment sequel would have to offer some kind of clarification that would explain why the timeline doesn't add up to the Kamurocho 3K plan in Yakuza 7. Now, if I'm being honest, I don't think this game is going to answer that. The reason being that I don't think it's gonna be as Yakuza based as the previous games were. While the fact that it's taking place in Yokohama will definitely open some room for references to Yakuza 7, based on the trailer we saw, they didn't seem to mention the Tojo clan or really any Yakuza for that matter, so I have a feeling they're not even going to acknowledge the Kamurocho 3K plan. Nevertheless, I don't necessarily think there'll be zero involvement of Yakuza. For example, it seems like Higashi will return, and there's a scene in the trailer where we see a Yakuza looking figure intimidating Yagami. There's also this campaign on Twitter started by the official Yuga Gotoku account, where if you retweet a certain tweet from them, they would tag with a GIF telling you if you won a reward or not. One of those GIFs had Homura in it, so it does seem like we'll see Yakuza people in the story, but it's hard to say how relevant any of the families will be. What we can at least confirm is that criminal organizations will definitely be involved. For For now, I'm just waiting for more information to come out. Hopefully we won't get too much story details because the trailer I think revealed more than we needed to know. Maybe we'll get a demo in the future, but regardless, I'm definitely hyped for this game. I think it's gonna be good and I trust the studio enough to deliver something worthwhile. Anyways, goodbye.